Okay, thanks for everybody for joining us this afternoon, certainly for sticking around. So we're doing kind of ads and agencies, which is always an interesting conversation for me, because I think we were just having this conversation off stage that a lot of us kind of get involved with big full animation production and big projects and stuff, but usually kind of the smaller kind of creative is often overlooked, and I think it's a golden opportunity for a lot of kind of producers and creatives to get involved with some really different stuff. I think it always comes down to if you know the right people or if you're in the right place at the right time, but we'll kind of get into that today. So if you don't know me, my name's Wes Wood, and I'm a creative for BBC Creative, and for me, I suppose, being a creative working with BBC Creative is such a kind of golden opportunity to work with producers from Manchester to London and further, to kind of create content, you know, some live action, a lot of kind of animated content for promos and for ads, and it's such an opportunity to be different and try new things, sort of thing, in a world of kind of CGI or stop motion, even 2D. And I kind of fly the flag quite a lot for the creativity that comes out of the Northwest, particularly animation. I kind of always kind of raving on about the talent that does sit in the Northwest, and it kind of does pain me sometimes to see so much of that creative work leave the Northwest and go to London for it to be made, and sometimes, and in some cases, some of our great talent to be leaving the Northwest to go to London to do the job to come back, which I just find really ironic. So it's a great pleasure to be talking to these guys today who've got massive amounts of experience in all of these fields, kind of looking for talent, working with agencies and producing stuff kind of on short, kind of quick turnarounds for large and small budgets. So I kind of won't rattle on anymore. I'll introduce the guys, and I'll start with Andrew at Flipbook Studios. What's your name? Where'd you come from?
Thanks, Silla. I'm Andy Law, and I'm the Managing Director and co-founder of Flipbook on Portland Street in Manchester. We're an animation and visual effects house, although we do a lot of other content as well for immersive applications, experiential. Generally, it's with advertising agencies or brands, but we also work with video games companies as well, doing cinematic trailers for them, where we act a bit more like an agency in ourselves. They come to us to work up a nice narrative that helps sell the game, and we'll produce a nice flashy trailer for them. And then we work in TV as well. The visual effects side of the thing, of the work we do, tends to be more your creature animation, set extensions, green screen work, and we tend to do that for TV dramas. We're doing a piece with the Worst Witch at the moment with the CBBC, but it could be anything from a micro show to an extended series. There's a team of, we're only a small studio, there's a team of 20 of us in the city centre. But we're normally busy working on brand-related work with agencies like these guys, or on TV work.
We've selected a piece of work for you to show today, which we are entering silly season, as I'm sure we're all aware. Media City is even getting its own Christmas market, whoop. So we selected a piece for you to show today. If you don't mind, we'll have a quick look and we'll discuss.
Yeah.
It's a lovely piece of animation, straight into the Christmas spirit.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing to see such great creative come out of Manchester like that. I wouldn't expect anything less, but where and how did you kind of pick up that work?
Well, we've had a long-term relationship with the City Council. They actually have their own internal ad agency. So like any other business, we have to do business development. We have to get in front of clients. We have to present our portfolio of work, but also try and challenge what they're not doing, rather than just showing what we do and what we do well. It's what they're not doing that we try and pick them up on. And Manchester, the agency had done some really nice kind of 2D animations in the past, but they never really put much money behind it. And they were always kind of restricted by the people who were funding their campaigns. So the very first commercial we did for M4, which is the agency that based at the City Council, they had buy-in from Transport for Manchester. Virgin Trains got involved. They had the Arndale who were putting money in as well. And because all these people were putting money in, the ad was very much, driven by what they wanted to see in the creative. So it ended up being this 20-second TV commercial. They spent all the money on the media spend and absolutely nothing on the creative. And you could tell, the ad was really dull. It wasn't our finest work, I'm happy to say. But we actually did a little Christmas card animation with the characters we created for that ad, just off our own backs at Christmas time to send around to everyone. And the agency saw it and loved it. And the following year, they just said, look, we just want to give you free rein to come up with some creative concepts. And we did one, and they greenlit it. And then we worked on it for the following 2 years. And this was the follow-up to the first animation we did for them, which was actually more successful, because it was just following on from the Manchester Arena attacks, and we were able to make the animation quite topical to focus on the coming togetherness of Mancunians. So that did really well, yeah.
That would kind of lead into what makes a great Christmas ad. We're seeing so many of them at the moment, and they're all, like, the most successful seem to be animated in one way or another.
Yeah, but the good thing about ads and short-form animation is that it can be very hot, topical content that you're creating. You can tap into the social conscience that is now, very much now. So as long as you've got something in there that isn't directly selling, it's a subtle thing. If you're banging on and saying, like some of those Windows ads, you buy one, you get one free, they're gonna irritate people and perhaps not tap into that wider social conscience. You've got to be a bit more subtle in your storytelling.
Do you think that the opportunity with a piece of Christmas creative is to be, well, I suppose it is a little bit more magical, and you can be a little bit more freer with the concept?
There is, but I think you need to be a little bit dark as well. If you look at a lot of the great Christmas films, like It's a Wonderful Life, he's about to commit suicide at the beginning of the film, isn't it? There's a dark element, and then you get that, you get the journey back to the light in a way. So I think a lot of successful Christmas films kind of capture that. They have that kind of sadness, and then they build up on how there is a warmth and a social warmth. You can fall back in your family and friends. And that's why I think that film is so popular, isn't it? It kind of captures that. It captures the mood of Christmas, the coming together, the celebration of those social connections.
And is there any particular challenge? I think you've kind of alluded to a couple, really, but what's the kind of the turnaround for a typical ad like that?
Depends who you work with. M4 are actually really good. They came to us in June, but that's because they wanted us to work up spend a long time on the previs, write a script, come up with the character designs. So they gave us plenty of time, but it really depends. Sometimes you can have a month to come up with something and get it out. The agencies that understand animation and have worked with animation companies before, like BGL and J-Wing, they give you plenty of time to work with them on the pre-visualization, coming up with concepts before you're actually building and executing the actual advert.
I think we're going to touch on the kind of that relationship and the understanding of animation just slightly later in the session, but from one kind of very big kind of Flipbook are there, and they're in Manchester, and you've firmly kind of put your stamp on the map to. I'm just going to throw over to introduce Steve Boot of Kadzooks Studios. Steve is massively talented and has many years' experience in the stop-motion animation kind of arena. But you've recently decided to go out on a whim and set up your own studios. Do you want to discuss a little bit about Kadzooks? Introduce yourselves and
Kadzooks. Yeah, I'm Steve Boot. I'm the co-founder of Kadzooks with Hayden over there. We come from a stop-motion background, and we're trying to just kind of like, as Wes says, we're just trying to build ourselves into our own studio, and kind of take that leap to be more independent and kind of look after ourselves.
We've got a reel of it. We've got something to watch. So what are the kind of the advantages and disadvantages of being like the new guys in town?
Well, we both come from a stop-motion animation kind of point of view, so we both used to work in a studio behind a curtain, so it's quite difficult to then kind of suddenly change and have to kind of put yourself out there and kind of be out trying to get the work in, be the guys kind of meeting people, bringing the work in, trying to get, when you're new as well, you've got to kind of get your name out and you've got to try and find the work, and that's been our main kind of problem, is just kind of trying to get people to notice us and try and get people to want to work with us.
But, I mean, your reel's amazing. I mean, I think that will, like, obviously people come in
You've got to get people to find it.
Yeah,
that's the thing. We managed to access some money to kind of, for Creative England, to kind of create a website, which I thought that'd be great because that kind of builds like a doorway to us. But then, of course, you forget you've got to get people to the website as well, and you've got to kind of bring people in. It's that kind of, that business side of things that we haven't really kind of like, or that we've really had to develop ourselves with over the past kind of like few months. I mean, the reel goes back several years when we were doing things really cheaply, kind of like really low budget, £500 things for the internet, little promos for various jobs. A couple of them were for this place called Do the Green Thing, which is a little internet site, and we've been building up from that for several years, and it's only kind of the past few months that we've really kind of taken a big step to kind of move ourselves forward.
We're having a little chat kind of at the bar before, and we were talking about kind of the benefits of being such a small kind of light-footed studio. Obviously, you don't have the overheads of some of the giants in the world, sort of thing. Did you find that's working for you? Yeah,
well, that's what we're trying to move into, kind of a market that can kind of that we can fill that gap where some of the bigger studios can't take on these kind of smaller jobs because they're too big. So we're hoping there's kind of like room for us to kind of move into that kind of smaller market where we're only a couple of people and we can kind of take on board some of the lower budget, some of the lower end kind of things, and kind of sweep up that.
We all work in similar worlds, and we find that being in like a creative environment, we find that sometimes a brief kind of drops, and you've got like literally a week or two to kind of turn it around. And sometimes when we go to some of the bigger agencies or bigger animation houses, it's like we've got 2 weeks we've got 50 quid,
Yeah.
whatever it is. It's like it's a real struggle to get some stuff, but like kind of knowing smaller companies has a massive advantage to us, because we know we can knock on the door and great creative can kind of shine through.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's another advantage of, like I say, being small and somewhere else we're trying to take advantage of, is just being able to react quite suddenly to a brief. And I hope, it's been working out for us so far, but I hope we can kind of keep developing on that and keep working on that. But it does kind of depend on making these contacts that we kind of need to kind of really work on.
And on that, I'm going to kind of throw over to Faye and introduce JBL. I mean, we're going to discuss later, just before we show a piece of work, it'd be really interesting to discuss as a creative agency how you go about finding those, the animation houses, and, how you come across those and how you develop those relationships with those people. But I think first we might have a piece of creative to show.
Yeah.
Do you want to introduce yourself? Sorry.
So my name's Faye. I'm from BGL and I'm an art director there. So BGL are an integrated advertising agency based in Manchester. So we work across like TV advertising, digital, social, press and radio as well, a mix of everything. And my role there is to think of ideas for creative campaigns, as well as being kind of visually responsible for how campaigns look as well in the end. That's...
we're going to show something.
Dear love, for 100 years we've seen your finest work. Every nervous boyfriend, every anniversary and counting. You make us act like fools, or everyday heroes. And although you make us lose our minds, you break more barriers than hearts. You're the family glue. My brothers stick up for each other, and mums watch football in the pouring rain. You're in the tiniest of touches, in every place we call home. Love, you're in every gift given.
Superb, nice. I think it's really interesting speaking, especially as kind of we're sat with a load of animation companies, speaking to the guys who are kind of thinking up those ideas. Mm-hmm. Where does that creative come from? Is it always kind of the client says, listen, I want an animation, I've got so much money, and you've got like 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 10 weeks to deliver? How does it kind of come about?
So usually when we get a briefing, myself and my creative partner Emily will go off and think of ideas together. And in those ideas there'll be like different techniques and execution. So depending on the idea, some might be animation, some might be live action. It does very much depend on the idea. We do also have to think about whether animation suits the client as well, and the tone of voice. So that's another consideration. And as well, like the budget does come into it sometimes as well. So I think with animation you can get a certain amount of quality depending on what the idea is. And like, for example, with live action, for example, I think you don't always get the same amount of quality as you do with animation. So overall it does kind of depend on the idea when animation comes in. Sometimes animation does come in later. So say if you think of an idea and there's a character in it and we're not sure kind of how to execute that, that's when we kind of go researching animation companies and think, we've seen something on their reel, that kind of character suits with this idea. So sometimes it can be right from the beginning, from the idea, or sometimes in the development stages later.
That kind of leads me into my next question. So, I mean, you've just touched on it, but how do you go about selecting an animation company to work with? Is it kind of experience? Is it guys that you've always used, always will use, or are you looking for something different or a different execution?
I think as well as seeing studios being able to respond to the brief, I think it's always good for studios to put their own stamp and their own flair onto the idea as well. Just because I think those little details can make the idea go further. And I think it's always good to see kind of an initial visualization as well. Because we usually get treatments from animation companies and we kind of look through them all and then we kind of make our decision based on those treatments. But yeah, no, it's always good to see an initial visualization of how it would look, just so we know that they kind of understand the concept as well.
And just to throw back to Andrew, if you don't mind, it's funny because I've heard it said a few times, it's like an advert's a really great incubator to develop a creative style. It's like somebody's literally paying you to mess around for the best part of, you know, a project, to kind of develop something that might be new or innovative or different. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, you only need to look at our reel to see how varied the styles are. And, you know, a lot of the stuff we can do in-house, particularly if it's 3D or CG, but we're not afraid of using and bringing talent in-house, freelancers on short-term contracts to come in and fill that gap, you know, that skill set we don't have. And we're normally very open with agencies about that. We do a lot of work with Sarches in London, and they actually recommend illustrators for us to work with a lot of the time, and then we'll animate their frames.
Just to kind of throw into Carl from J-Wing. I mean, you talk about working with animation houses and clients quite a lot about kind of managing relationships and expecting that what a kind of client managing their expectancies, I suppose, really.
Yeah.
I mean, talk a little bit about. Sorry, we've not really introduced you.
No, that's fine.
This is Carl from J-Wing.
Yeah, so I'm Carl Stones. I've got a fancy title of Executive Creative Director, which means I get a lot of stress, basically. So I used to work at BGL. I used to be Creative Director at BGL with this guy on quite a number of kind of projects. I guess my role, to cut a long story short, is in the commercial world is try to outthink and outflank all the rest of the people that are in my sector. So I guess what I'm trying to do when I work with a animation company or a studio is to try to create something that's memorable and ownable. And then, to be honest, it's like you say, talent of Emily, who's sat hiding down there, and Faye here, to give me that kind of creative idea, and then challenge me to try to sell that into a client, because we tend to go up against clients that this isn't their bread and butter. They're kind of accountants, mathematicians, data people. This creativity thing is a bit kind of smoke and mirrors. So I think what we try to do is to break that illusion and make it accessible. It's probably the best way to kind of describe what it is that I do. So, I think what's been quite interesting on a number of projects is if you can demystify it and you can break it down in terms of the animation methodology. So you explain what the client will expect to see at certain points and what we want them to sign off at certain stages. You've got a greater chance of then getting them behind the idea. So because they feel very part of it at very early doors, chances are, you know, there's going to be fewer changes down the end. So it's kind of, we hope. But
so just as using the Beaverbrooks as because all three of you worked on the Beaverbrooks, was that like a traditional piece of creative, an easy selling? The guys are on board.
Well, to be honest, they'd not done any. The client hadn't done animation, and again, what was great about the ideas that the guys came up with was we deliberately went for animation. Because what we tend to do at the start of the project, without boring you senseless, is we'll probably map out the world, the commercial world on the wall. What I mean by that, we'll just get screen grabs of what they're currently doing from a brand perspective. And straight away, you can almost see where the holes are or where the opportunities are. And straight away there, it was a case of, would it be great to do animation? And like you say, Faye and Emily there was almost a case of, you know, we knew that budget could go a long way. And we almost like set the scene up to do animation. We have things called tissues. I don't know what you guys have that, where you almost like, you just talk about top level ideas at very early doors, and then we planted the seed of animation, because in the commercial world of selling jewellery, it's really differentiating to have something like that on the screens, so that when you involve the client in those conversations earlier, chances are you've already kind of, it sounds really bad, but you've already got them kind of involved and engaged And then I think the challenge really was then is making the most of the line became blurred in terms of who was the studio, who was the ACDs and CDs at your end, and the creative teams, didn't it? And we all did our best to kind of nurse it through. And it's not easy, it's hard, it's bloody hard work. Do you know what I mean? To try to keep... It's not that you're protective, it's you've got this kind of vision that you know is going to really work in that kind of commercial world, and we've got 30 seconds. We've got 30 or 40 seconds to land that idea in amongst the 2,000, 3,000 ads that the client's going to see throughout the rest of the day. So it's a tricky ask.
Just in the realm of kind of landing the ad, I know we spoke about it briefly outside, but kind of obviously everybody wants a social media kind of sensation now, and especially if it's animated. If it's not a social animated sensation, then it's not a hit sort of thing. At what level or what point do you start considering like the social treatment? I mean, we spoke briefly about, I think it's a really funny world that we live in at the moment, that we've spent years making our pictures all 16:9 and lovely, and all of a sudden we've gone back to this 4:3 kind of ratio, and all of that lovely action that we've been able to contain within the 16:9 is now cut again to that kind of small aspect. Do you reversion the original creative, or do you set out and make a specific version?
Do you want to say that?
It's normally the agencies we work with, they've normally planned ahead, so they'll normally have the main the TV ad if they're doing a TV ad or digital film, and then they'll already, as part of what they've pitched into the client, have a series of social content that is normally derived from that original ad. So if the agency was to talk to us, then we would normally be prepped well in advance that a lot of the assets will need to be repurposed for different formats. And indeed, a lot of the stuff we produce is formatted for various different channels and outputs, whether it's for out of home, so on digital 6 sheets, or it could be anything from a train departure board to a big 3D screen in a city centre. Normally, the content we produce, we have that in mind when we're creating the content. Invariably, a lot of the time, they'll have rich media ads as well, and there'll be skyscrapers or banner formats or MPUs, which are more 4:3. And yeah, you just have to be aware of that before you produce it.
It's quite a major part of the creative process now, isn't it? It's not just making the film, it's like all of the extra deliverables as well, which I think people kind of forget. It's like, oh, you've got to do those as well. I mean, certainly I've been in instances where we've concentrated so hard on creative that almost those extra social assets have been a bit of an afterthought, and you're kind of backpedaling a little bit to meet the deadlines.
I think every ad space now is moving. If you think about it, with this digital out of home, whether it's on the end of your trolley as you're shopping around a supermarket, or that ad that the guys lovingly crafted was started out life as a cinema ad. So it's the way it's shot was for cinema, and the sound is Adobe Atmos, isn't it?
Right.
So it's a big production kind of scale, which then was scaled down for. It was on Cora the other night, wasn't it? And then in all various different shapes and sizes. So you've got to factor. At the end of the day, it's whether you can come up with that idea, and whether that idea is going to resonate, and whether it's going to cut through all the rest of the stuff that's in that ad break. So that's all the battle is. It is a very dog-eat-dog commercial world.
It is following up on social channels, isn't it, and making sure that what you are creating has longevity.
So from social media, I'm going to throw over to James from Forge Animation. Sorry, mate, you've been really patient there, Sat. But James, you've got like a really interesting animation company, not just in the realms of traditional animation and doing ads, but you're also working with technology as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think there's an example.
Hello, Anna Louise. We wanted to say a personal thank you for the trust you've put in us, ever since you chose Hiscox to insure your home. We know insurance isn't the most interesting of things, but we also want to help make sure all the things that are important to you are well protected, and we want you to know you've made a good choice. Because many of our customers already know the difference our award-winning cover makes. You see, it's when things go wrong that you realise how right you are to have Hiscox by your side. We cover every single item or set you own that's worth up to £15,000 as standard.
Don't worry, we're here to help you.
And your possessions are protected wherever you travel for up to 60 days at a time. We've also added £75,000 of cover in case you have grand designs for improving your home. And there are more key benefits we include as standard to give you even greater peace of mind. So thank you for choosing us. And know that we are here for you if and when you need us. So if things go wrong, you can be sure we'll always help put them right for you. Hiscox, as good as our word.
I mean, so you've got real personalisation kind of rooted in the heart of that ad. What is that process? How does that begin?
Yeah, so this is a series that we worked on with a global ad agency in London, a series for Hiscox. So yeah, the process, what this technology, what it does is it merges clients' data with the animated film that we produce. That wasn't just like one advert that, we hope we got lucky and yeah. So the idea is that they can send out in real time hundreds of thousands of these ads, and every single element of it is personalised to the client.
Does that bring any challenges with us? How do you work with that technology?
This particular technology itself is pretty intuitive. I mean, I think the tougher thing is working out up front and being really clever about how you can build personalisation in. That's probably more the kind of thinking up front is probably more of the work than the actual doing.
And do these go out as social assets, direct to the customer's inbox, or?
Yeah, well, this was actually an email campaign. And I think personalised video has can be perceived as being a little bit gimmicky, but this particular technology, just because of the way it's built, it has made this stuff really impactful. So, like, clients are seeing 70% improvement in message retention, increased open rates, reduced drop-off rates. I don't work for this platform, by the way. So yeah, it's taken it from what I think can be perceived as being a bit of a gimmicky thing into a real weapon to help our agency partners and their clients to achieve their strategic objectives.
And how does that particular software kind of integrate with an animation workflow?
So yeah, I should say I'm not at all creative. I am the other half of Fudge. I deal with everything that's not fun. But as I say, essentially, we take our clients' data, we upload it into a system, we produce shot by shot each of the animation frames, and there will be various different ones. So you see in that had the client's name, which is also read out by the voiceover. It has their address, the type of cover, the assets that are covered by their insurance. So you're not always going to see the watch and the diamonds. That was part of that person's cover, their renewal date. So yeah, somehow the guys just kind of merge them together.
No, you've got, I think we've all got quite a lot of kind of experience working with agencies and animation agencies. James, you kind of, in particular, kind of voiced a few which I thought were quite interesting, some kind of good practices. Mm-hmm. Do you want to kind of give us your top three? Yeah.
We made every mistake in the book early on, so I could go on for hours. But I think it was really interesting what the guys said. I think the two big lessons that we learned working with agency partners was where we fit in to the creative ideation and coming up with the concepts. The majority of our clients come to us because of, they trust us to come up with fun, engaging, interesting concepts and characters. But that's not always the case. Sometimes the agencies we work with just want a safe pair of hands that they can trust to deliver against the exact brief. And I think sometimes you come up with ideas that are better. there is a danger if, I think working with agencies sometimes, that you can tread on toes. I think it's really interesting what, Kyle, you were saying, being open to working with the animation company to hone these ideas. I think that's brilliant. And also understanding the process.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all sounds really weird, but everything's kind of co-created now, all the best stuff. And I think the lines have kind of been blurred between agency, studio, creatives, haven't they? And you just end up kind of huddling earlier on jobs, getting involved in the kind of the black and white scamps and the initial kind of core ideas once you've kind of got those locked down. And then there's almost like an embryonic kind of process that sets in. And I think it's just being honest, isn't it? And being, about budgets and about time frames and like I say, just trying to demystify the whole process is probably...
Yeah, and budget and time frames are key, aren't they? It's devising. You normally come to us with a creative blueprint, and then it's a case of, right, what can we do for the the client's normally got the media date, the launch date in the diary, and it's about hitting that and doing the best quality work you can in the time frame. So you have to work together because you guys don't have an overview of how much the animation, how long it takes normally, or how much it costs. And we have to be able to help steer you in terms of what needs to be developed for the animation, characters, environments.
I think that's key. I think, collaboration, it seems like, kind of wins over kind of, there's always that kind of ambition from an animation studio, but there's also the animation from a creative end as well. And obviously to achieve the best you can. And it kind of reminds me of a conversation I had last week about, it feels to me, you always get a little bit more for your money from animation, because I don't know whether it's because of the animation company or the individuals involved, but they always want to over-deliver and impress. And I find you always get that with animation, not so much with live action.
Yeah, I think there's some truth in that. We'd love to get paid more. But I think, I'm sure it's fair on people who work in live action as well. I'm sure they're very passionate about it. It's just that crews cost a lot of money to hire. But certainly our team, they're very passionate about what they do. And if it's a nice brief like the Beaver Brooks was, it came along with Emily had written a lovely poem to go along with it. So it was quite nice to work up a treatment with you guys, to match.
It's interesting you mentioned earlier on about like the Christmas ads and stuff like that. It's kind of, I guess our job really is to box clever. If there's going to be loads of Christmas ads that are all animated, don't do an animated ad. Or if you are going to do an animated ad, do something that isn't schmaltzy or a little bit different. We were chatting in the bar earlier on about the probably my favourite one at the moment, if you get 2 minutes to have a look at it, is the mother ad for IKEA. It's just, but that's because there's a really nice human truth at the heart of that, and it stands out. Like you say, it can be dark, it can be stand out.
It can be humorous, like the Kevin the Carrot work as well. Yeah. They're all good fun animations, and they're cheery and warm, and they suit a Christmas ad. The ones that are directly selling to you are the ones that don't do very well. All the John Lewis ones do well because they're not particularly about John Lewis. They're about some narrative that is very loosely connected in some way.
Okay, well, thanks, guys. I'm just going to kind of very briefly throw it open to any questions. Greg's telling me we've got 3 minutes, so we've got time for a question.
Hi. So you mentioned personalisation and immersive. What do you think about augmented reality and those street activations where a street sign says hello, and do you think
stops and stuff like that?
Yeah, do you think it's a bit of a novelty, or do you think it's actually going to become quite a big thing?
There is the element of the gimmick with it, but it depends on the application and who you're trying to target, and indeed what the creative campaign's like. We do quite a bit of AR, but it tends to be it's actually in health, and it tends to be to help sell drugs, which there's money in pharma. But Yeah, the application. I mean, a lot of VR and immersive nowadays is being used more as a learning tool than in the advertising space. We did a lot in the past. They kind of tailed off a bit, and we used to do a lot of pitches in VR for VR applications, and there was a lot of excitement around it. But then, when it comes down to the budgets and the figures to produce it versus how many people are actually going to view it, there's always a kind of, the FD gets involved and goes, what the hell are we spending this amount of money when we're going to hit, 100 people here? So it has to be a well thought out campaign. A lot of the stuff we do is played at trade shows or big expos, fanfares. The out-of-home stuff we do doesn't tend to be interactive or immersive. It just tends to be kind of, do you know what I mean by out-of-home?
Yeah.
So that's just flashy content for outdoor screens, so more passive viewing, really. I'd say the AR stuff is quite expensive to produce, and it is a bit gimmicky. I certainly wouldn't build a business model just on that.
From an advertising kind of perspective as well, it depends on the product or the service. So if you look at if you've got an excitable little kid and you're studying Lego there and they want to know what happens with that little toy inside the box and you can see it built before, it just makes perfect sense to have it at that point of sale. But if it's somebody dancing like Michael Jackson in the middle of a high street when you're rushing to try to get some jewellery, it's never going to work, is it? So it's all about context, really.
But then, experiential content is making a massive surge at the moment, particularly with millennials and the younger audiences who are looking for a breakaway from social media. They want interactive, immersive experiences they can share with people. So there's lots of kind of new experiential experiences opening up that are fun and engaging. And there's the War of the Worlds thing down in London at the moment, where you actually walk through the whole environment and you get the tripods coming at you, and more like theatre than your standard flat content.
All right, well, I'm going to hold it there. If you've got any more questions for the guys, I'm sure they'll be floating around in the next half an hour or so for you to grab them. But from my point of view and from Greg, a massive thank you for our panel. A really incisive talk. Thank you.